Good afternoon. So we'll start with our ethics class today with the ethics lecture 19. And as we have been doing our classes related to the ethical and moral dilemma in government institution and private institution as part of our chapter which we were doing earlier. We have to do today ethical dilemma and concerns in government and private institutions. Now there are not much of differences if we talk about the ethical dilemma as far as government institution and private institution are concerned. Largely they are all same. If you look at the ethical dilemma part, the concerns and ethical dilemma means same. But first and foremost you have to understand the sources of this dilemma, from where the dilemma arises. What are the sources of it? As far as sources are concerned, the sources in government institutions and the private institutions are different. So because of that, the nature of the dilemma will be different, and how to address it will be different. Strategy to address the ethical dilemma will be different in government institution and the private institution. So first of all, let's understand what is actually an ethical dilemma when we talk about the institutions, whether it is public institution, that is government institution, or private institutions. Now, public institutions are governed by the government laws, right? Private institutions, they are governed by the government laws as well as the laws which are framed by the institution themselves. Because we are a developing country, here if the institutions are private, even then they have to abide by the government laws primarily. So the dilemma in government institutions are more important as compared to the private institution. Having said so, we have to understand that the private institutions play a major role in the lives of people, especially in 21st century. If we talk about the India of 21st century, now modern India, in this India 21st century, you will realize that now, as compared to when we got independence and as compared to pre 1990 or pre 1991 to be precise, before 1991, most of the aspects of our lives were controlled by the government. Now, after that, what happened? After that, the institutions started playing a minimalist role. The government gave away to business and private sphere most of the powers which they were holding upon. The discretion and power of the government kept on decreasing since 1991, and we all know why it happened. It happened because of the liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Liberalization, the economy was liberalized, economy was made open. That economy and the various aspects of the society, it was made open to whom? To the private entrepreneurs, to somebody who wants to start a company, somebody who wants to start his or her own venture. And now you see the sphere of entrepreneurship is so evolved, so open now that most people, most students who are passing the college, especially in generation Z, Gen Z, they don't think of going to the government examination, they don't think of going to foreign education, abroad education, they think of starting something which will help the society. So in this scenario, our life is surrounded by private institutions. For example, You preparing for UPSC, your interface, especially the preparation part, is having a private institution, our institution, some other institutions also where you interacted with me, or you're still interacting with the other faculties, other teachers for your preparation. So your sphere of interaction with the institution starts with a private institution. You may be having any health issue. For that you go to a private hospital. You are using your laptop or tablet. You bought it through a private institution. You are getting your groceries from big basket, from other sources of delivery, private institution. You see, you are surrounded by the private institutions, but still private institution playing a major role in your life. But it is not a developed country, it is a developing country, and we have a mixed economy. That is why even the private institutions are governed by the laws of the land, that is constitution, other laws, bylaws, regulations, everything. Private institutions also need to play by the rule of law. They are not free to do what they want, as compared to what happens in the developed countries. Developed countries like USA, UK, France, Germany, etc. Many of them developed countries. There is a clear delineation between government and private. Government, private, they are all different. Government has no business with the business. In this current regime, since 2014, the kind of regime we got, the governance we got under the rule of NDA, National Democratic Alliance, this party, as I told you, that you have to analyze from different perspectives, and you are mature enough to understand that we are being ruled by a party which is pro right wing, which has a different ideology as compared to left. You see, you have to understand the situation from all the angles: the political angle, religious angle, social angle, cultural angle, your global aspects. Then only you will be able to analyze everything. And I say this, that you cannot differentiate or disseminate between paper 1 of GS, paper 2 of GS, paper 3 of GS. Likewise in psychology, mix and match, use everything everywhere. You cannot have a prepared material for a single answer, because this is a humanity thing. And in the examination also, if you follow the pattern, you will be much more successful, and the task will become easier. So you have to use all the techniques you have studied at one place or the other, so that your answer becomes better. Analysis should be done at different levels. So you will see how the political parties in India operate. This is the left wing parties, and these parties are CPI, CPI-ML, and others. Many parties are there. Then comes your right wing party. Right. In the right wing, BJP, Shiv Sena, many other parties, small parties like AIADMK. You can have some semblance of right wing in AIADMK in Tamil Nadu. These parties are at right wing. Where does the Congress lie? Parties like Congress lie? They are in the middle. That is, they are neither tilted to right wing nor tilted to left wing. But if we talk about the comparative analysis, they are pro to left as compared to BJP. BJP is having an affiliation with most of the parties who are pro right. So in this scenario, when the state or the center is being ruled by these parties, what happens? In that scenario, pro business approach is followed. What is pro business approach? Pro business approach is giving more liberty. Liberalism we have seen. Liberty. What does liberalism mean? Liberalism mean nothing. Before 1991, there was license Raj. If you had to get any service done, if you had to establish a business, you needed a license. And license from where? From the government. So it became very difficult. But look at this party, the BJP and the right wing parties, they are pro business. So the liberalization which happened earlier and in 1991 is behaviorally displayed in a pro business manner by these parties. As I told you, that everything has a structure, process, and behavior, right? So structure and process of liberalization was already there, but in behavioral dimensions, the parties like BJP, they are more pro to the business. Now, if you have a pro business ecosystem, what will happen? Your life will be run by private institutions, mostly the private institutions. But as I told you, that still we are a developing country. We cannot give a free hand to the business because the maturity of the capitalist is not of that order which is required to give them a free hand. Also, we look at the citizens of this country, as we had seen earlier, that citizens of this country, most of them belong to the section of weaker sections, that is the last and the least. To the last and the least is the motto of the governance. To the people, that is the governance, the administration has to be pro those people who actually are in the category of have nots. So if they are in the category of have nots, how can they access the resources? To access the resources, it is important that the governance is pro weaker sections. So to ensure this, the government comes to play the role. The government plays the role of what? Regulator. That nobody should be able to do a fraud against you. Suppose the companies who are selling the deodorant, they show in the advertisement that once a young man coming out of the college sprays the deodorant, all beautiful women around him are approaching him only after he sprays the deodorant. This advertisement is highly unethical, misleading, especially for an immature mind. The youngsters, the adolescents who just enter the college are around the age of 18 years. So their maturity has not reached to a level where they can use their discretion, that these are just being displayed as advertisement, and I have to use my own mind to decipher whether it is going to be, whether this is reality or not. Although it is their fault, but the advertisers cannot brazenly display this because it gives a suggestive idea to the nimble, immature mind. And such ideas actually give way to patriarchy also. Patriarchy, an idea where most of the decision making, most of the authority, the influence, all lies with the men, and women are being shown in this kind of advertisements as just a just as an object, who don't have their own discretion, who are not having the maturity and wisdom, and they get attracted to somebody having just a better fragrance. What does it show? So these kind of advertisement, although it is very subtle, but it plays a major role. You see the Hollywood celebrities, the celebrities from your USA and industries, other industries abroad, they don't do advertisement for fairness cream. Because they are not color conscious as the Asians are. The Asian people, especially the people of India, if you ask anybody, that person is good looking or not, the only parameter they use is whether the person is fair or not. Although these things are declining now, people have started understanding that these should not be the criteria at all, and we are moving towards an egalitarian society, but still it prevails. Because of that, various celebrities from our industries, the cricketers, the movie stars, they were endorsing this fairness cream. Even the stars of the order of Sachin Tendulkar, who is considered to be a genius, he has also done the advertisements for certain substances, certain products which may not be good for the health of the youngsters. Like the cold drink also, look at the cold drink advertisements, they are also suggestive. We know very well that these kind of sugary drinks are very, very dangerous, especially in the kind of environment we live in. These drinks are making your body gullible to sugar spike, which may result into you catching a disease of diabetes type 2. It's quite possible. But the celebrities like Sachin Tendulkar, or in a recent show of Karan Johar, when celebrities like Deepika Padukone or Ranbir Kapoor, they said something about their own private life, but since they are the icons, whom they are the icons, they are the role models, whom our youngsters look up to. Now, if they are imitating such behavior and the icons display a behavior which is actually not moral, ethical, whether it is a wrong thing to do or not, can we judge it an immoral and unethical act? The idea is, the answer is yes. But they say that they are doing it in their own private sphere. Yes, you are always a private person if you are not a celebrity. You are always a private person, you are not a if you are not a politician. So politicians must display, the bureaucrats must display, the Bollywood stars, cricketers, whosoever is a public figure, they must display a behavior which is which displays their leadership quality, that they are the leaders. They must be shown helping poor people, they must be shown addressing the cause of concern in our society. Recently, a player from Afghanistan cricket team, when he was roaming around in Gujarat, in Ahmedabad, what I can recall, in a place where he had gone to play the cricket match, he saw poor people unable to live their life comfortably, asking for two square meals, asking for people to help them. His heart did melt at that point of time and he helped the poor people. This was recorded by some media people and it was played on the reels in Instagram and YouTube and various other social media platforms. Now, what happened due to that? This person, this cricketer from Afghanistan, was able to display a humanitarian behavior which can be copied, which can be imitated by the youngsters. This is how it should be. This is how the, the leaders in our society must display the behavior. So, we were talking about the ethical dilemma. The ethical dilemma in government institutions and private institutions, we have seen that we are surrounded by private institutions, especially in the current era where we live, that liberalization, privatization, and globalization is there, and we are living in this era surrounded by private institutions, but still, because the citizens are gullible, because the private institutions are not mature, there is a case, there is a chance that they may display an unethical behavior, and because of that, the laws, rules, regulations, and the conscience of the government functionaries should be addressing the public interest. This we have seen. The context you have understood. As I gave you certain examples from what has happened recently, likewise in your paper also you should give these examples. Not only making it theoretical, because theory definitely is required. You can give 10 arguments, but you will not score marks. If you give 4 arguments, but you have been able to explain it, given the examples which examiner is also aware about, then you will definitely get marks. The idea is to substantiate whatever you write. Now we'll come to the point that what actually results into the dilemma. Why there is a dilemma? Ethical dilemma, ED. And as I discussed with you the deodorant case or many other consumer affairs case, that also you should cite that the consumers are God. For a service oriented institution, for a service oriented organization, consumer must be God. So if they are giving these suggestions to the consumer, they are doing something unethical. And consumer affairs court, consumer affairs body, as I told you that some institutions who help you prepare for IAS examination, they are also being sent the notice because of this unethical behavior. So ethical dilemma, from where does it arise? Ethical dilemma will always arise when we have decision alternatives. The alternative decisions, if we have only one decision to take, there is no case of ethical dilemma. As I told you, the train case, the train is running at high speed, and it can be diverted or it can be left to run its own course. If it is diverted, one person dies. If it is not diverted, 4 to 5 people die. Which decision you will take? Whether you allow the one person to die? Then if you realize that one person is your relative or someone who is very close to you, will you allow the person to die? Or is the death of 4 or 5 people equal to the death of one person? Which decision you will take? Such kind of decisions are always there in the sphere of the public institution, that is government institutions. There are decision alternatives. If there are no alternatives, there won't be any dilemma. There are alternatives. Now why there are alternatives? We will understand it through an example. Suppose you are an IAS officer, a senior IAS officer. You are heading a committee of administrative reforms. You are the chairperson of it. You are doing your research. The parliament has asked you to submit the report by the next parliament session. You are doing your research. Some media people approach you. Now, this media house is known for its honest reporting. This media house is known for its integrity. People also watch this media house. The media house editor calls you and asks that you are already preparing the administrative report. Can you just share some insights so that when we display it in our news, the government officials will also be careful. They will also get a lesson, and the citizens of this country, they will also understand the kind of corruption which is taking place and what is their role in alleviating the corruption. Now you have two decisions to make, because it is not defined under the rule of conduct, code of conduct, that whether you can reveal the information or not. One is that you will not reveal the information. You will follow secrecy under the OSA. What is OSA? Official Secrecy Act. You will say that I am bound by Official Secrecy Act, the act which imposes a foundation on civil servants that they cannot reveal the official secrets. That is, they cannot reveal the information which may result into a threat to national security, public order, etc. You quote this act and say that yes, if I reveal this information to the media house, it may not be a good idea, because many of the information which I am using is going to affect the national security. So better idea is to keep it secret. The second idea is, okay, if you are doing this, keeping it secret, which value you are following? First is that national security, you are citing it. Going by your words, you will say that okay, national security might be affected. You are also following the patriotism. These two things you are following. You are also following not only the national security and patriotism, you are also following the rule of the law, because the rule says that you should not reveal the secrets. This is the virtue here. If you don't reveal the information regarding the administrative reforms. The second idea could be you reveal the information as much as possible. You tell the media house these are the points which have come up under our analysis, that the recent joinees in the Indian Administrative Service, Indian Police Service, and various other central services, they don't have a spine, because they are studying ethics but they are not following ethics. These kind of reports can be given. Because of the release of these kind of reports through the trusted media house, not only the bureaucrats who are serving in the government, the young bureaucrats will also be inspired. By revealing the information, you are also following the principles of good governance. Because of the transparency. So, you are already studying the administrative reforms, you must follow the principles of administrative reforms. That is, in this smart, The T is transparency. You are following the transparency principle, and since you are following the transparency principle, you are following the good governance principles also. Which one to follow? The idea is this. These are the decisions. Or, as I gave you the example of a highway or a road, 6-lane road passing through a thick forest. If the 6-lane passes through the thick forest, the tribes living nearby, the people living nearby will have a better life because of this construction of road. Other alternative could be diverting the road not through the forest but outside the forest. What will happen if we divert it to outside the forest? Although it will be costlier, it will take more time, but there will be sustainable development. In this, what is happening? Greater good in this. If it is following, if it is passing through the forest, most people get employment as a construction worker or any other capacity. There will be overall development of the people living near the forest, or otherwise nation building will also take place. But on the other hand, what is the virtue? Sustainable development. Which one to choose? Public interest is involved in both of them. If you go by the long term sustainability of the decisions or long term decisions, the sustainable development is a fair idea. But if we go by the severe situation of unemployment, no accessibility to medical facilities, no urbanization, despite the fact that India had achieved independence in 1947 itself, then better idea is that the road passes through the forest. So alternatives, decision alternatives, and you can see that these two alternatives have different moral implications. The moral implications involved here are completely different. What are the moral implications here? When we are taking a decision of letting the road pass through your forest, the moral implication is that you are following the principles of, first, the government order, two, the greater good. You are following the rule of the law. You are following the rule of greater good, because most people living nearby or otherwise will get benefited. You are following the rule of nation building. Right? And if you are allowing the road to pass not through the forest but outside the forest, you are following nothing but sustainable development. Which decision to take depends upon the discretion. Of whom? The discretion of the official, the discretion of the system the discretion of the organization which is involved in the construction of the road. Why this discretion has been kept? The discretion came from the British era. From the time when Britishers were ruling India, they gave discretionary power to each and every official. As you will see, the discretion of the governor has also arrived from the Government of India Act 1935. Most of the part of the Government of India Act 1935 is from the British Reform era. The kind of reform which Britishers did, the kind of documentation, the administrative setup which Britishers had, from that this governor post and the discretion attached to the post of the governor, as you can see in your news current affairs section of the polity, where the South Indian states, they are saying the governor should be having a fixed timeline by which the governor should either say yes or no to the bill which was sent by the assembly of the state. Now what does it say? See, one, the event which I have mentioned right now, the current affairs is from your polity current affairs. GS paper 2 can be involved there, but we are using that example in the GS paper for ethics, integrity and aptitude. Why? Because as I told you, that if you keep studying every paper compartmentalized in a compartmentalized way, then it will be very difficult to interlink between them and connect with the answers, good answers. So you should think of example from everywhere around you. Discretion is given, it is there. This discretion, what to do? Along with the one more thing which I already talked about, secrecy. Discretion and secrecy. These two things are the major source of corruption. Corruption is there because of the discretion and the secrecy. The more the discretion, more is the scope of corruption. The more the secrecy, definitely the more is the option of corruption. So discretion plus secrecy, that gives rise to your corruption. When India got independence from the British rule, inherently Indian government copied the structure of police, the structure of army, and the rules, laws and regulations which govern the administration of the country. So there was, and there still is, a huge role of discretion played by the administrators. There is again secrecy. As I told you, there is Official Secrets Act. To break the vicious cycle of Official Secrets Act, RTA was brought. OSA is nothing, it is Official Secret Act. And RTA, Right to Information, was brought to break this vicious cycle of Official Secret Act, OSA. Not USA, it is OSA. How to tackle the ethical dilemma? Firstly, we understood what actually is the ethical dilemma, from where does it arise. The ethical dilemma, there are alternatives. The alternatives are there because there is more discretion, or there is discretion. And the discretion and secrecy, they gave rise to corruption. How to tackle the dilemma, or how to tackle this corruption? There we have to decrease the discretion or discretionary power of the bureaucrats. We have to do away with the secrecy. But we cannot completely remove the Official Secrets Act, because there are certain cases where national security might be at stake. If that is the case, when national security is at stake, as it comes under RTI exception, under the RTI, under the proactive governance, under the initiatives of e-governance, or under the initiatives of NEGP, National E-Governance Plan, that you must be aware about these terms from your GS paper 2 studies, National E-Governance Plan. Under this, we have seen that all the departments, or most of the departments, barring a few, are supposed to keep most of their information about the department and the ministry in public domain, so that people can access it very easily. But it cannot be made that all the information cannot be made available, again because there is a threat of national security being compromised. So there has to be secrecy, there has to some exception, as it is in the RTI, Right to Information Act. You have a right to information, but all information cannot be provided from the government side to the common citizens, to each and every one, because it may be misused, it may be abused. What we need to do to ensure that there is lesser corruption? Of course, we'll have to reduce this discretion. Discretion needs to be lowered. Secrecy needs to go. Secrecy must be reduced. Discretion must be reduced. The ultimate idea of a developed country is to ensure that there is no discretion at all. The rules themselves are sufficient enough to take a call. But given a situation of developing country, given a situation of lesser order of mechanization, as you see, the developed countries are so mechanized that they can afford to give zero discretion to the public officials who are commanding the position. We cannot completely do away with the discretion part. Likewise, the secrecy part, of course, there has to be certain clauses, as there is with the Article 19, freedom of speech and expression. There are certain clauses, there are certain exceptions, which says that if your freedom of speech and expression disturbs the public order, disturbs the morality of the society, then you cannot be allowed to operate the freedom of speech and expression. Likewise, lesser discretion and secrecy only in the matters of national security. That can be done. So, if we compare India to the developed countries, you will only find this discretion being very, very less in other countries, secrecy not being there. Now, as we have seen, discretion and secrecy, D and S, they are giving rise to C. Discretion, giving rise to corruption. To reduce corruption, you have to reduce these two. And if we reduce these two, you will realize, suppose the government officials or the laws which are framed there, they reduce the discretionary power of the government officials. What will happen? The power is going towards the public or not? The public are becoming more powerful, so it is public interest. Secrecy being only for those matters which are a matter of grave concern as far as national security is concerned. Matter of grave concern for national security. Which will affect the public at large. So again we are going towards public interest. So if the actions of the government, both the structure, process, behavior, all these three elements are in the public interest, as we have been saying since the class 1, that if the structure, process and behavior, all the dimensions are in favor of public interest, then the idea of corruption will be minimized and it may be completely diminished in some time. So we have to orient our administration towards public interest, and that is why this ethics, integrity and aptitude paper has been introduced as part of one training. If you develop the ethical competence to see through the complexity and take a decision which is there in the public interest without compromising the laws, regulations and rules, without compromising, because I've told you that the bureaucracy has to be legal, has to be rational, and then it has to be ethical, moral as well. The decisions have to be taken in the public interest without distorting the laws. So the discretion actually should be used in favor of the public interest. The secrecy should not be there, but secrecy clause should and must be used only for the purpose of upholding national security, patriotism. So this makes our public institutions vulnerable to corruption, the secrecy and discretion. If we compare the public institutions, the government institutions with the private institutions, you will realize that as far as discretion is concerned, very less discretion is given to the officials or functionaries in the private institutions. They have very less discretion. If you go to any bank which is completely private, you ask them for a loan, your educational loan. They have a set of data that whether you are having these documents with you, you are fulfilling the criteria, you will get a loan. You go to any bank which is largely public, the shares are held by the government, large part of shares held by the government. They have a set of rules, but still the government official has been given, the government official sitting there has been given a power of discretion to ensure that the loan is given to the most needy. The laws were kept in this manner thinking positively, being a bona fide person, the constitution makers, they left these loopholes, or the laws were framed in such manner because it was great trust of people, great trust of the citizen of this country, great trust of our constitution makers in the steel frame of the country, that is the bureaucrats or whosoever will sit, not only the IAS, IPS and all, the other government functionaries also. The government functionaries are also the bank probationary officers. They have to play the equally important role. It was thought that they will take the decision in favor of the, again I am saying it, the least and the last. Least and last, or last and least. To the last and the least. To the last, somebody who is not so empowered. To the least, who is underprivileged, the weaker section of society. But the discretion which was used by these government officials, or the officials who were sitting in a capacity to use this discretion in favor of the most needy, to the least and the last, started using it for their own purpose, started using it, actually abusing and misusing the law. Abusing the law, misusing the law. When these government officials who are supposed to take a bona fide measure, a positive measure, started using the same laws or abusing and misusing the same laws to favor whom? To favor themselves. Personal aggrandizement, as I have told you, personal. They use the law power to usurp in their own favor, personal aggrandizement. Or, as I told you earlier, favoritism, nepotism. Started using the resources where there is a clear case of conflict of interest. That gave rise to corruption. But in private institutions, as I gave you the example, private institutions, they follow the rules strictly. Now, there are pros and cons. There are pros and cons for both the private and public institutions. When there is no discretionary power, then despite the fact that the official sitting on the across the counter may see that you belong to a poor section of the society, but still may not be able to help you because you are not having a particular document. I'll give you the example how difficult it is to operate in the administrative setup of India. A backward village of Tamil Nadu, a farmer goes to take farm loan. The farmer has all the documents with him. The only document missing is death certificate of his father. Now his father, who was suffering from Alzheimer, it may be a case study also. The farmer having all the documents, but his father who was suffering from Alzheimer. Forgot to mention his age in this particular document when he was passing on his will to the son. Now, when the son is going to take a loan, because of this small mistake, the government authorities could not release the death certificate of the father. All the documents are there, the death certificate is not there, despite the fact that the farmer is a poor one, farmer is needy as far as farm loan is concerned. If he is given the loan, he is accountable, he will return the loan, he will not only give the interest, but he has the capacity to grow a good yield from his farm. All these things are known to the officials, but the officials will follow the rules strictly and will not give him loan. Now there is another situation when the official is given a discretion that you can take a call despite the fact that there may be one or the other paper missing. You may take a call whether to help the person or not. Now the government official sitting across the table realizes that he also belongs to a family of farmers, has great empathy towards the weaker section of the society and releases the loan to him, passes the order to release the loan to him. Which one is better? Of course the second situation, but here you see the discretion is being used positively. Positive use of discretion, positive, empathetic, use of discretion. And that is why actually the discretion was kept. The private institution, the private bank follows the rules, laws and regulations, so there is no scope of corruption, or the scope of corruption is very, very less. This is how the moral dilemma in, or the rise of corruption in, or the sources of corruption in private institutions and the public institutions differ. But despite the fact that private institutions are largely governed by these laws, rules and regulations, the role of discretion being very less, secrecy also is very, very less. If you see the private institutions, they operate in transparency as compared to your public institutions largely. You go to the public offices, the rooms, they are closed, they don't have a transparent glasses. If you go to private banks, even the manager's room, the branch manager or the highest officials, their rooms are also made of glass, so you can see through what is happening. That brings a culture of transparency. Despite the fact that everything is transparent, the laws, regulations and rules are made such that the discretion is very, very less. When we talk about private institutions, discretion and secrecy is nil, almost nil. The corruption happens in private institutions also. Now the question is how and why. In private institutions, what happens, as I gave you the example of Chanda Kochar, who was ICICI official, that to MD, who gave loan to her own brother-in-law. Husband's brother. knowing full well that the documents are not complete, knowing full well that it may go as a NPA, non-performing asset, the person may not be able to return it, she allowed the loan to be released. What was there? What was being used there? Favoritism. Nepotism, which is quite prevalent in private institutions. And if you see, if you have an open mind and if you observe everything, you look at the Bollywood, so called Bollywood, Hindi cinema industry, you will realize that most of the star kids, Ajay Devgan's daughter, Shah Rukh Khan's son, these people have an easy launch. When they are supposed to act in a movie, it will be very easy for them to do so because of the directors and producers and the whole ecosystem supporting them. Nepotism is there, high degree of nepotism. The same thing happened in the case of Chanda Kochar, who was later on jailed, who was later on removed from her position. The case is still going on. So private institutions also have this favoritism, nepotism, partisanship. They are all the more or less the same word. You can use nepotism, which is quite regular, favoring somebody who is your own, favoring somebody from whom you have some benefits. These are done on the level of employees. The source of corruption. Another source of corruption in private institutions, despite the fact that laws, rules, regulations are so well framed, is your question employee versus employer. Whom should the law support? The laws of the organization. It should be supportive for the employee or the employer. And you will realize that India, being a country where the labor force is the important, omnipotent force which runs the country, whether you go to a railway station, your baggage is carried by the coolie there. Go to any industry, most of the things are run by, of course, the laborers who are operating at the lower rung. Unlike the developed countries, where they are not seen as somebody who has lesser power. In the developed countries, if the cleaning staff comes to your house, he will also be wearing winter suit, coat, boots, everything will be there. They will remove it. They will get into their uniform for cleaning the house. They will clean the house, take their money, go back in their car. They are doing this job to run their family. That is fine, but they are not discriminated. It's not that they are doing this job because they are having lesser power. But in countries like India, the hierarchical mindset, whoever is sitting at the top of any private organization also, chairman, managing director, CEO, everyone of are being feared by other staff who are at the lower rungs. So the laws which are to be framed, we should favor the company or should it favor the employees, employer or employees? From here comes the ethical dilemma, and that gives rise to corruption. As I already told you, that India is not Dubai. If you go to Dubai, there is a set rule and regulation. You break the rule, the punishment is so harsh. that nobody dares to break the rule. You go and leave your car with the keys in the car on the main road around 2 a.m. at night. Just leave the car, go back to your home, come back at 6 a.m. in the morning. Your car and the key will all be there. Because whosoever dares to steal the car key or the car itself will be given a harshest punishment. But here in India, even if you have a contract with your employers, with the employee, if you are working in an organization, you have a contract. The employer will break the contract and will not ever fear any punishment. Why? Because they know there are loopholes. The employer will be having muscle power, money. They will approach the police and the police will harass the employee. That is why there is always a constant fear in the minds of people, in the minds of employees. Whether I will be released my salary or not, that is the question. So, here it becomes very important and necessary that government comes into play. The government and rules and regulation of the government will come into play, which will favor whom? Employer or employee. Now, the government will have to play a balancing role. They will have to favor both employer and employee, but more the employee. As you see, the laws in our country, the laws in a developing country should favor the weaker sections. Why most of the laws in India are pro-women? Because we know that in a patriarchal society, the setup is such that the ecosystem is such that women have been subjugated, discriminated, prejudice exists there, the stereotypes exist, there is discrimination either in a subtle form in our language or in an overt form, the harassment taking place at the workplaces. So because of this, there is a need for the government to chip in to help the employees in various formats. Labor laws, which help the labor, that is those who are working for the company, the employees, they will be helped by the labor laws. But what happened during the freedom struggle and after the freedom struggle ended, our country, many parts of the country have been ruled by the left parties, like West Bengal. It was ruled by the left parties. In the center, the government of Congress has been there. They are also pro to left as compared to right wing. They are towards the side of the left if their ideology is dissected. Then we will realize that the Congress is also pro left. So those parties who are pro left in their orientation, they always help the labor. What happened? The emergence of labor unions took place. And over a period of time, the labor unions became so strong that it became very difficult for the employers to run their organization. Now, for a country like India, which is aiming a $5 trillion economy very soon, if the employers cannot operate in freedom, cannot operate with a vision and discretion, nobody will dare to become an entrepreneur, to start a new business, because of the existing labor laws. ensure that this labor unionism does not affect our business economy, the parties which are of right wing orientation, as we can see since 2014, have always worked vociferously, vehemently, aggressively to tone down the labor laws. To ensure that the labor laws are not misused, they are just used, or used to ensure that there is a balance between employers' rights and employees' rights. And there the government chips in. This is the whole idea about the ethical dilemmas, the corruption practices, which are their theoretical angle only. I'll give you certain examples. And we will also talk about the laws and conscience, the role of laws, the role of conscience when it comes to ensuring an ethical moral conduct in both private and public institutions. In our next class that will be held tomorrow at our prescribed time of 10:30 a.m. only. Today after a break it started, that's why it was started late, the classes started late, but otherwise we'll keep our fixed time of 10:30 a.m. only. So tomorrow we'll have a class again of ethics, integrity and aptitude, and these things will be revisited and other parts of the syllabus also be revisited. In this week we will be able to cover this chapter. We'll be left with one more chapter only that we'll cover in the next week. So by end of November we should be in a comfortable position as far as the theoretical aspects of the ethics, integrity, aptitude paper is concerned. I think that the matter of theory should be given to you once we complete these things, because you have noted down in your notes now. The videos will be in a recorded format with you. There is no need to worry about that, and they will be with you. We will not keep any restriction. You can use it till the time you crack the exam, till the time you are able to get a good rank. There is no harm in that. We'll improve our classes also, and later on once you have subscribed with us, later on also if you need help required to any particular subject, we'll be allowing you. Either it will be completely free, or with a large concession it will be available for you, because you have been attached to us. So there is no need to worry. Then we'll start with the case study, and before that you'll be given the notes so that you can go through it, revise it and start answering the tests. Some of the test papers are remaining that I'll evaluate and send to you very soon. Then we'll have another test. As far as essay part was concerned, I'll see that if we are still lacking the information which is required to write the essay, then we'll provide, or otherwise if it is just a mental block, that we'll address in the next class whenever we have the essay class. And the psychology classes will run according to the timings provided. I'll just update about this, and then we'll run our classes smoothly. Now since we have no more festivals as such left, only festival will be the year end and Christmas. That's also a very small holidays, 1 or 2 days holiday will be there. So we can finish our courses, and then you can completely focus on the prelims preparation, which is very important, and nowadays it has become very dicey as well. So thank you very much. We'll meet in the next class tomorrow.